All right, good afternoon. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see some familiar names and faces starting to pop on, and we do have some more people filtering in slowly. So I'm just going to start with the standard quick orientation to some of the Zoom functionality on this webinar, just so you can best navigate the tools here. And then I'm going to go into some brief introductions to the speakers and the flow of the workshop. So my colleague Megan Fowler and myself, we are your tech supports today. So please feel free to send us a private message if you're having any technical issues or if you need any further direct support throughout the call today. We are keeping everybody muted for the main presentation, but you'll have the opportunity to chat during the breakout group session a little bit later on. We do encourage you, if you're comfortable, to turn on your video just for networking purposes and because it's nice to see others' faces, but if you're not, that's okay too. And the participant button there does allow you to view a list of the other participants on the call. The chat button, that one's important. We do encourage you to kind of click that little thought bubble icon there. That will open up a chat box, and that's where you can pose any questions or comments you have throughout the presentation. The moderators will also be presenting links in there during the call. And we're going to do our best to get to everyone's questions during the Q&A section of the agenda later on. Please notice there's a drop-down, and that allows you to chat to everyone or privately to an individual. The main presentation is being recorded today, and we'll be making that available on AFT's website, along with a resource handout with resources that today's speakers will be mentioning. And the breakout groups will not be recorded. Today, we're also going to be running a few polls just to gauge where you, the audience, is at, and hopefully keep you all on your toes. So actually, we're going to take just a minute and have you all fill out the first poll. We just want to get a sense of who's here in the room with us. And as you're filling that out, I'm just going to say a couple more sentences. I just want to extend a formal welcome to you to the fourth webinar of the Farms for the Future project. You are in strategies and tools for making farmland available to farmers. And my name is Jamie Pottern. I'm the New England Program Manager at American Farmland Trust, and I will be your MC for the next 90 minutes. Okay, so it looks like we got the poll results here. I think you can all see that. So very interesting. Got a good mix of folks. About half of you are land trust, volunteer, or staff. We've got some municipal folks, some nonprofit service providers, some regional planners, and some other. So if you're an other, feel free to let us know in the chat who you are. It's always nice to see who's here with us. Well, that's great. And that lends nicely into just a little bit about the workshop series. So this series was created through the partnership and truly incredible organizing efforts of the following people and organizations. My colleague Megan Fowler and myself at American Farmland Trust, Stephanie Morningstar at the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, who's here with us on the call today, Meg Quinn at Maine Farmland Trust, Jeremy Lucci at Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire, who's also here on the call, and Nancy Everhart at the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And this project has been generously funded by Jane's Trust. We are also joined today by some really wonderful guest speakers, some true champions in the field of agriculture and land access in our region. So we've got Shemariah Blum-Evitz, Land for Goods Program Director, Stephanie Morningstar, who's the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust Executive Director, Sarah Cargill, who's the Field Agent for New Hampshire at Land for Good, Jamison Small, who's the Program Manager, the North American Sustainable Ag Project with Oris and Fresh Cut Farms, and Jeremy Lucci, who's the Conservation Project Manager and Farmland Coordinator at Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire. So powerhouse group of people, so psyched to have them on with us today. And we also have a wonderful video contribution from Anthony Munene, who's from Fresh Start Farms, who agreed to share part of his land access story with us here today. So this webinar, as I mentioned, it's the fourth in a 5-part series of educational workshops that we have designed specifically for land trust, municipalities, and other nonprofits and service providers here in New Hampshire and in the other northern New England states. Those who just want to better understand how to support farms and farmers in their communities. And especially due to COVID-19, as you all know, there's just this real growing interest in local agriculture and a real desire for more skills and training for securing a more resilient food system at the local level, as well as advancing greater land justice. So therefore, each workshop, and for those of you who've been on these, you know, we've designed these to really offer some core content, some state-specific tools and resources, Q&A, and networking opportunities. And we just want to note that each of these has been designed to really build off of the previous one. And so if you didn't get a chance to catch workshops 1 through 3 in the series prior to this, we definitely encourage you to go back and catch the recordings, which are available on AFT's website. And the 5th webinar, which is next week, we'll tell you a little bit more about it later. Tools and resources for supporting Black, Indigenous, and farmers of color in your community. The final one will be next week. And we definitely encourage you to show up for that one. And we'll go over that and other dates of upcoming workshops at the end of this presentation. So before I hand it off to our first speaker, I'm just going to quickly run through the agenda. So you've heard me blather on, and then you're going to hear then from Steph Morningstar. She's going to give an overview of the work of the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust in advancing land sovereignty and land access for Black, Indigenous, and farmers of color in the region. Shema will then share her extensive knowledge on some high-level tools and considerations for land trusts and towns as you consider the opportunities for making farmland available to farmers. We're then going to have a brief breakout group session where you'll get to get off of mute, and you're going to be in a small group to talk to others about land access efforts you are already doing or hoping to do in your community. We'll then come back together to hear about resources and tools specific to land access in New Hampshire with Kara, Jeremy, and Jameson, as well as to hear some exciting case studies and farmer stories. We'll then have the Q&A at the end with all the speakers, and then we're going to try to wrap up right at 3:30. So it's going to be a real jam-packed 90 minutes. And so without further ado, we'll launch a video from Steph Morningstar for some historical and land justice content. So take it away, Megan.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Stephanie Morningstar. I'm Oneida Turtle Clan, and I'm the Executive Director of the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust. I'm here today to share with you a bit about the context and rationale for our work centering BIPOC land access. I'll briefly share with you some of the keystones to what informs our work as a land trust and how we're endeavoring to create land access for BIPOC farmers, earthworkers, and land stewards. Did you know that between 1776 and 1887, the United States seized over 1.5 billion acres from America's indigenous people by treaty and executive order under duress? This map, created by the eHistory Project based on data produced by the Bureau of American Ethnology, mapped every treaty and executive order signed during that period, illustrating the invasion of America. You can see this by watching the blue territories disappear from east to west, replacing them with a tiny fraction of reservation lands where indigenous peoples were forcibly relocated. Those reservations are the tiny red squares you see. As you can see, the gray areas to the east represent the original 13 colonies that were occupied prior to 1776. The Northeast U.S. is encompassed in these territories, most of which are unceded, meaning the land was never legally ceded or treatied. It is truly stolen land. This is a brief timeline of how the land and labor of Black and Brown folks have been stolen through physical and bureaucratic violence. We don't have enough time today to review this timeline in detail, so be sure to register for Webinar 5, Tools and Resources for Supporting Black, Indigenous, and Farmers of Color in Your Community, to get the expanded version. Slavery was a dominant feature of the antebellum South, but did you know that it was also pervasive in pre-Civil War North? The New England states all have a history of slavery. In the early colonial periods, Europeans invaded these lands and enslaved the indigenous peoples who lived there. As New England colonists drove indigenous nations out of their homes, they replaced these enslaved native people with enslaved Africans and invested heavily in the slave trade to power their economy. States such as New Hampshire never even banned slavery. There, slavery only became illegal with the ratification of the 13th Amendment in 1865. I also want to point out the year 1862, a milestone year that shaped agriculture in the U.S. The Homestead Act happened in 1862, and that exploded Western migration by providing settlers 160 acres of indigenous land. It has been named unquestionably the most extensive, radical, redistributive governmental policy in U.S. history. This national land dispossession not only benefited white folks, it continues to do so on exponential levels. It's estimated that about 93 million people, a quarter of the United States population, are inheritors of people who received Homestead Act allotments. Also in 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed the Morrill Act, which distributed indigenous land, inaccurately named public domain lands, to raise funds for fledgling colleges across the nation, masquerading a massive transfer of wealth as a donation. Finally, in 1862 was the creation of the USDA, which has historically discriminated against Black, Indigenous, and other farmers of color who were pushed off their land by decades of racially biased laws and practices. For example, Black farmers shared stories that USDA officials, especially local loan authorities, spit on them, threw their loan applications in the trash, and illegally denied them loans. This happened for decades, through at least the 1990s. When the USDA's local offices did approve loans to Black farmers, they were often paternalistically supervised, meaning farmers couldn't spend the borrowed money without receiving item-by-item authorization from the USDA, or they received the money late, and in farming we know that timing is everything. Meanwhile, white farmers were receiving unsupervised, on-time loans. Many say egregious discrimination by local loan officials persists today. Any discussion about race in the USDA has to start with the crisis of Black land loss. Although the U.S. government never followed through on its promise of freed slaves of 40 acres and a mule, Black folks were able to establish a foothold in Southern agriculture. Black land ownership peaked in 1910 when 218,000 African American farmers had an ownership stake in 15 million acres of land. By 1992, those numbers had dwindled to 2.3 million acres held by just 18,000 Black farmers. And that wasn't just because farming was a declining way of life. Black folks were being pushed off land in vastly disproportionate numbers. In 1920, 1 out of 7 U.S. farms were run by Black folks, and in 1992, Black folks only ran 1 out of 100 farms. Additionally, this country's legacy, built on the theft of land, bodies, and resources of people of color for the benefit of profit and power, is crystallized in the challenges Black farmers experience in the food system. For example, in New York State, their $42 billion agricultural and food industry, for example, the disparities between Black farmers and white farmers are best summarized by the existence of only 139 Black farmers among 57,000 farmers in New York. This is complemented by the 2017 USDA statistics depicting a total net cash farm income for Black farmers at minus $906, while for white farmers it was $42,875. These numbers are dramatically similar in all states in the Northeast. These alarming economic disparities and lack of representation of Black farmers are a direct result of intentionally unjust systems and policies dating back 400 years. Farmland ownership is highly consolidated and racialized due to this long history of attempted genocide, dispossession, and slavery. Today, 8% of farms control over 40% of all U.S. farmland. The average farm in America is now over 400 acres compared to 150 acres in 1940, and that number increases every year as smaller farms buckle under the weight of the capital-intensive industrial agricultural model. There's also extreme racial disparity between who labors on land and who profits from it. Over 60% of farm workers are people of color, largely Latinx. Meanwhile, white people own 98% of all farmland, or about 50 times the number of acres owned by people of color. Today's barriers and challenges for farmers of color come in many shapes and sizes, from lack of access to patient capital to unfair, casual, and paternalistic lease agreements. Consider one case of a NEFOC network member farmer who was offered a land access in the form of a casual arrangement. She was twice offered to grow food for her community on land without negotiating a lease, instead by being coerced into handshake deals with white landowners who controlled everything, including when she could access the land, how she farmed, and what she farmed. Both instances devolved into racist stereotypes and assumptions that caused her harm and ultimately forced her to leave. This is a common experience among many NEFOC network farmers and why the NEFOC Land Trust exists today, to connect farmers with permanent, secure, and heritable land tenure. This is where land trust and farmer services organizations come in. We are the gatekeepers to farmland access and the services needed to make a life on land. The Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust is working every day to address these disparities in land access. I ask one question of you as you embark upon this webinar on accessing the strategies and tools for making farmland available to farmers. Who are the farmers of color in your community, and how are you working beside them to ensure this legacy and history of racism and oppression ends with you? Thanks so much for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at connect@nefolklandtrust.org and check out our website for the most recent webinars, tips, and tools at nefolklandtrust.org.
Thank you so much, Steph, for that powerful video and context about your work. And just to remind everyone, Steph will be providing even more detailed historical context and sharing some really powerful case studies and farmer stories in webinar 5, which is coming up next week on September 22nd. And again, she's also here on the call with us today and is available for questions during the Q&A a little later on. We're going to run our second poll right now, so we could all just take a few minutes. Let us know, how ready do you feel your town or organization is to make land available to farmers? Okay, interesting. Quite the mix, right? So we've got some not ready, some possible readiness. Some are like, oh, we're already doing this. And some of you are very ambitious. You're already doing it, but you want to be doing more, which is really great. And some of you are not sure. So this is great. This workshop is for you. And so I think that tees up our next speaker quite nicely. I'm going to hand it off to my friend, Shemariah Blum-Evitz from Land for Good. She's going to help us understand land access barriers, things for you all to be thinking about when considering making farmland available to farmers. Welcome, Shema.
Thanks, Jamie. Great to see you all, or your little computer squares. And thanks, Stephanie, for that really great intro and all this amazing information to think through. This is a really important time where at Land for Good, we're getting lots of questions from aspiring farmers and landowners wanting to make their land available. So thank you all for taking time to dig into this more. We're going to move on, Megan. Land for Good, just so you know, works on the ground with farmers and landowners and communities in all 6 New England states. So sorry about my cold today. We offer regional programming, advocacy, and research, and do some consulting nationally as well. Our work focuses specifically on farmland access, so that's how farmers can get onto land, farmland tenure, how farmers can hold that land, and farmland transfer planning, so how farmers can identify and transfer their farm to a successor. We have a lot of material on our website. Most of it's free. We also offer advising directly to landowners and farmers, as well as to other service providers and communities. And we'll get into that a little bit later, but feel free to reach out to Kara or myself if you have any questions navigating all of that and want more assistance. So what does it take to make farmland available for farming? I'm going to touch in this presentation on supporting farmland transfer, being aware of what new farmers need and considerations for making new land available for farming. You might want to revisit webinar 1 for a more in-depth visit on Julia shared about the real importance of viability of farms, helping to keep our farmland active. And lastly, I want to mention it takes a village. Farmers are going to need support from a wide array of service providers, and you'll see this play out in the case studies later on. So why is farmland access a problem? First, we have a large portion of farmers that are aging out of farming. 2/3 of those older farmers in New England shared with us in a recent research study that they don't have identified successors, meaning they likely do not have someone in their family or someone in their management position in a position to take over the farm when they are interested in exiting. So this translates to a lot of land nationwide that'll be changing hands in the next 2 decades. And that transition is when things are at risk. It could be sold for development, fractured, consolidated with other larger farms is part of the trend. So these are all risky time. Most farmers want to keep their land in farming. However, most of their wealth may also be tied up in that land, requiring them to sell the farmland at the highest value in order to retire. And non-farming heirs may also want to see it sold at that highest value to benefit their inheritance as well. Many farmers do not expect to retire. Instead, they prefer to be involved in farming for a long time. Many of you might know that from talking with farmers. We've been told they want to die with their boots on or on the tractor. So this can lead to a decline in the farm business if there's not a succession plan in place. And a declining business is harder to sell, it offers less financial return, and can be a challenge to rebuild. So we strongly encourage farmers to start thinking of a farm transition plan even in their 40s, certainly by the time they're 60. It can take a long time, ideally a 10-year time frame, to do all the planning and make a transfer steps to start taking place. It's a complicated, time-consuming, can have a lot of family and personal dynamics. So for all these reasons, it's easy for the farmers to ignore, and they can use support from all of us to get this process started. And moving on, talking about farm seekers. So in 2 national surveys, new and young farmers identified land access as their top challenge. So conventional methods of purchasing or inheriting farmland are not working for our communities. Who are farm seekers? This is a diverse group, not one typology. They can be aspiring farmers with or without farming backgrounds, beginning farmers with some experience, and there are established farmers that are seeking land to expand their operations as well. They can come from different communities and need support getting to know the area, what is allowed, where they can get support. They may be seeking land in urban or peri-urban areas to be close to home or markets, communities they want to serve. And they can have a wide range of enterprise interests or growing practices. All this translates into being open to who those folks are. As I said, the top challenge for new farmers is farmland access. In addition, New England land values are among the highest in the nation. Purchasing is out of range for most new farmers. The ability to access financing can be a challenge, and the potential debt load can be quite high or insurmountable. There's also a mismatch in retiring farmers who may want to sell their 100+ acre farm and versus new and beginning farmers who may be interested in 5, 10 acres to start off their operation. First generation farmers are more in need of skills, market opportunities, support services, maybe not plugged into those as well. For farmers that are not white, male, and heterosexual, there's a lot of concerns around safety, prejudice, and discrimination that could come up. So we're going to talk a little bit about the land. Not only do farmers need a piece of land, it actually has to be available and accessible, all of these things. So available meaning available for farming, that it's not being utilized for other purposes, and that the landowner wants to make it an option. Accessible meaning they can get to it, and appropriate. So that could include having good soils, water access, whether there's housing or buildings that are going to be needed, availability for labor and markets, favorable land use and zoning, affordable is something in their reach, fits within their budget. Secure, somewhere that they're not going to have to leave year after year, somewhere they can have a 3, 5, 10-year arrangement or longer. And findable, it has to be something that is that they know is available and that people are putting out in the universe. We're going to touch about myths about farm ownership. Property ownership is a deeply held value in America and the mythology of the American farmer. However, nearly half of farmers rent some or all of the land that they farm, and some farmers will never own their farms. Leasing farmland is often recommended to new and beginning farmer as an affordable opportunity to access land and balance the debt load. And some farmers will own their home farm and rent additional acreage to meet their business plan. And these landowners are private landowners, but also town, state, institution, land trusts as well. I want to bring your attention to a great new guide that Land for Good put out last year called the Farm Access Methods. It's a decision guide. It's in your resource packet and on our website. It covers in depth a variety of ownership and, a variety of farmland tenure options, including ownership, path to eventual ownership, and non-ownership opportunities. Now I'm going to just spend a few minutes. Jamie, how am I doing on time? Okay, so a couple minutes on how to directly make land trusts or town-owned land available for farming, a few steps. So first you want to start with your goals. Why do you want to make this land available? Could be for many reasons or purposes. It's just good to understand that and for everybody to be on the same page about what those goals are, whether it's to keep it in active management, a rural amenity, an educational hub, being clear. Then next you want to think about your vision that's taking a step further. What does that ideal farm look like? How involved is a landowner or community in the day-to-day operation? What's restricted? Are there any special growing practices? Is there going to be public access or multiple uses on the site? And those are all part of the vision. You want to understand your land. So this includes the production potential, all the natural features that are on that property, the infrastructure that's included or might be needed. These are a couple of sources that might be helpful in building that. The UC Davis Soil Survey and the Web Soil Survey are both great starting points in New Hampshire. There's also Granite View, which can be very helpful. And next, just type of farms. You might want to think about what type of farm when you're thinking of that vision that you would want to see there. Different types of enterprises have different smells, different noises, things they're going to bring along with them. And those are things to consider when you're opening that up. So when you've thought about all that, then you're going to want to figure out how to find a farmer. So one option in New Hampshire is to use the New England Farmland Finder. This is an online website database where you can post a property that you have available. You are going to want to clarify your goals and objectives and have a way of describing that offer. So you can do that on the website and make that publicly available. You can also do that in other forms, and you can get help from Land for Good, do this on your own. You're going to want to have a description of what you're offering and determine your criteria and qualifications. What are you looking for? And what kind of search process are you going to do? Is it an application? Is it a bid? What's going to be that interview process and who's involved? Once you've done the search, you're gonna figure out and negotiate a contract and an agreement is the next step. So just to touch on communication will be key through this whole process, both in the searching and bringing a farmer on board, but also the whole tenure arrangement. You want to keep an open and clear communication plan, and that's also good to have a communication plan in writing as part of the agreement. This next one says, we're going to move ahead, Megan, thanks. This cartoon says, sorry, I don't shake. I get everything in writing. So the written lease provides a key basis of understanding, and it's a great way to ensure you remember what you said, the farmer remembers what they committed to doing, and it will serve as that basis for going forward. Next, I'm going to touch on what else you can do. Not everybody's in a position or wants to be making a specific parcel available. And there are many other ways to be supportive in making land available. So this can include raising awareness of the issue in your community, helping ID your local farmland access and transfer issues, integrating farming and farmland access into local planning, ag-friendly zoning, considering establishing an agricultural commission or joining if you have one, advocating for timely farm transfer planning, help seekers and owners find each other. You can hold events like mixers for landowners and farmers. You can do public education events. You can encourage the use of public land for farming or leasing, protect valuable farmland, raising funds. This can be a town fund for conservation purchases or fundraising and grants that would be helpful. So that's a long list, how to get started. These are a shorter list of where to start. Talk about it with peers, town government boards that you're involved with. Identify available public-private land. Consider sponsoring, hosting educational events, distributing and referring people to resources. And this is a list of, next, Megan, is a list of who to involve. There may be a lot of different parties in your town that you could include. And then lastly, I want to say you don't have to do this alone. There's a lot of service providers on this call that are helpful and would love to share their expertise. And Land for Good is also available. This is a quick view of our website. You can contact us through the contact button, and we can get back to answer your question or questions your landowners or farmers have in your community, as well as access our toolbox. And let's see, do we have more? Yeah, thanks, Megan. So this is our direct service. Just wanted to let you all know that we do work directly one-on-one advising with farmers or landowners, and we do consulting also with land trusts and towns that are interested in having more support through this process. And I've mentioned that those websites. And education, we offer a wide variety of workshops, info nights. We're offering a new virtual office hours now that you can point farmers and landowners to. We offer online courses and our resource guides, and we're very open to working with you to developing something that works for your community. So thanks all for listening to my rattling on. Look forward for the Q&A and hearing more state-specific info from everybody else later.
Awesome. Thank you, Shema. Right on time. Amazing. And just to say for everyone on the call, Land for Good's incredible. And I just feel like every time I hear you talk, Shema, I learn so much more. So thank you for being with us on this call today. So we're going to transition now into some breakout groups. So the way that this works is in a few minutes, you're going to be magically transported into a Zoom room with fewer people, probably maybe 4 people in there. And one of the speakers or organizers will be your facilitator. And basically the whole purpose of this is just to get off of mute and get to talk to some other humans. And we're just going to kind of go around and share something your town or organization has done to help make land available to farmers, or maybe what you're hoping to do, or even just something you're hoping to learn. So we're only going to have about 15 minutes in this time together. Please do not go away. We hope you'll stay for the breakout, and then please do come back. We have some incredible state-specific speakers in the Q&A after the fact. I guess without further ado, Megan, please send us off, and we'll see you all back here in about 15 minutes.
we're mandating regenerative. Oh, bye.
All right, welcome back, folks. It's always so hard at the end of that to get cut off there. Beth, I hope we can finish our conversation later, but I hope that you know, everybody just had some really rich and enlivening conversations in your groups. We unfortunately don't have time for like an official report back out to the group about some of the content of your conversations, but if you did have some juicy action item or calls for support or anything that came up in your group that you feel called to share in the chat box, we encourage you to do that. We are going to transition now to our wonderful state-specific speakers who are going to talk about some resources and tools for land access in New Hampshire. They're going to share some really great case studies. So we're going to kick it off with Kara and Jeremy. So take it away, guys. Thanks for being here.
Well, great. Thanks, Jamie. So just first, a little bit about SELT, or Southeast Land Trust of New Hampshire. So we're a regional land trust, obviously, in southeastern New Hampshire with a mission to protect and sustain the significant lands in our communities for clean water, outdoor recreation, fresh food, wildlife, and healthy forests. So a lot of our work is focused on protecting farms, and over time, it's evolved into a broader effort to sustain food production on these protected farms. And in turn, that's led us to really think a lot more about long-term farm viability and how we can ensure the energy and investment that we put in to protect these farms initially results in longer-term food production and a more sustainable and robust food system in our local communities. So in a previous workshop, I talked a little bit about SELT's farmland protection efforts. So today I really want to share a little bit about how we've tried to merge those protection efforts with an attempt to increase the access and affordability of that farmland for farmers. So in a minute, I'm going to show a quick video that we made with some young farmers, but I first wanted to explain sort of how we got there, particularly with these two farmers. So on the seacoast, I'm sure it's the case elsewhere in New Hampshire and New England, but land values have really skyrocketed, just completely outpacing our farmers' ability to pay for it. As an example, an average 20-acre farm somewhere in our service area could go for $500,000 or around $25,000 an acre. And there's simply no way a vegetable or livestock operation could run a profitable business with a mortgage of that size. So this has led a lot of our younger generation of farmers to develop their businesses on leased land. While this may be workable, leasing farmland can have its own challenges around long-term security, an inability to invest in infrastructure, and the farmers need to just find housing for themselves. So even home rentals on the seacoast can be priced above the farmer's ability to afford that house, as you'll hear in the video. In some cases, SELT has used an affordability tool, or we're working on a few projects using affordability tools, which gives the land trust the ability to ensure that farmland we protect will be owned by farmers. But in other cases, as you'll see in the video, we simply act as a matchmaker between a farm family looking to sell with a farmer looking to buy. So to set up the video a little bit, I was working with an elderly landowner whose family had run a dairy farm in Farmington up until about the mid-1990s. Her husband had passed away, but the family really wanted to ensure that farm and that land could never be developed. So they reached out to SELT, and I immediately, when I first set foot on the land, knew this could be a perfect project to protect the land and find a young farmer looking to run a diversified farm. So after discussing the idea with family, they agreed to sell an easement at a discounted rate, and then in turn sell the protected farm to this young farming couple who you'll meet in a second, named Jimmy and Kristen, who operate Clyde Farm. So I'll let them do the talking, but first I just wanted to add a quick few notes with regards to a few things they'll reference, which you may not otherwise understand. So they refer to New Roots, which is a well-known farm on the seacoast. And they also reference moving north, which on the seacoast just means kind of moving outside the immediate coastal area, where land is a little bit more affordable, but there's also fewer farmers markets and real immediate direct consumer opportunities. And last, they mentioned the New Hampshire Farmland Fund, which Kara, the next presenter, will be describing a little bit about after the video. So I apologize, the music is a little cheesy, but I think you'll get the message. So take it away, Megan.
tendency to fly out too?
So we started at New Roots, which that was a really good way to start, to get to see. That was our first farm experience in New England. I had been farming for a long time, but never in this climate, so I learned a lot in those first 2 years, and that's when Jimmy decided he wanted to start raising animals, so he got to do it under the name of New Roots, and use all of her clientele, and she had raised meat in the past, so she had good tips for him, and that's how he really learned what it took and what he needed to do to make that work. And I worked full-time for her as a vegetable farmer.
So I guess the possibility of owning land rather than leasing land opens up some things that you can really only do on land that you own, like putting in the time to like plant an orchard or putting in grapevines. We're interested in fermentation. We make our own cider and wine, and we have experience in the fermentation industry. So yeah, that's something that we could never, you would never invest in building a winery on leased land, or you'd never invest in planting an orchard or a vineyard on leased land, since it's like a perennial production sort of thing.
I mean, we really found a good niche here. There's definitely seems to be a need for local organic produce, and there's not a lot already here. Where we were, there were a lot of other small organic farms, and the clientele is there, but there's more to compete with, and we just couldn't afford to buy anything farther south.
I think it's hard enough to buy a new place, but then also have to be in like a super competitive market.
Yeah.
You don't really have any wiggle room. The Farm Future Fund has been really helpful as we transition onto this property, because they've just given us resources to like seek legal guidance, to looking at contracts and the easement language, and making sure that we're going to be in a position legally in terms of how the easement and the sale is going to happen, that we can have like a future farming here that's not going to have any like unexpected kind of consequences of the easements or the sale contract, how it's been written. And in addition to that, they're helping us do some enterprise analysis, looking at long-term profitability. They're also just, besides the financial assistance they're giving us, they're just being a great resource for connecting us to like NRCS grants or something that we originally maybe asked them about if they could help with, and they're able to just say, well, actually, there's an NRCS grant for that, and we're glad to help you, connect you with the necessary resources to obtain those grants.
And living where we were growing was a really high priority for us. So yeah, now that we are going to own this place, we've planted a bunch of perennials already, like apples and berries and tons of flowers that I never would have been able to grow.
People ask us, like, how did you find this place? Like, how, this seems like such a match made in heaven. Like, how did you, like they're asking us, like, how did you do it? And we're like, well, we really just reached out to CELT, like a lot of farmers do, and kind of daydreamed out loud to them about what we would be looking for in ideal farm property. And they let us know when there was something that kind of fit those parameters. So, I mean, working with CELT has been amazing. There's no way that we could be purchasing property, conserved or not, really, without CELT, because they have provided like the scaffolding to the deal. Whereas if this was just on the open market, even if it was conserved land, it all would just be happening so fast, and there might be a non-farmer buyer interested in purchasing the property. But with CELT kind of being the matchmaker and the deal maker, it's kind of allowed it to happen at farmer speed rather than having to compete on the open market for a property.
So just to kind of end and then pass it off to Kara, I think, this is an example right now. They've moved on to the farm. All that video was shot on the farm, and they're currently leasing the farmland. They have a 5-year lease with the family with a legal option to purchase the farm once it's been conserved. So it's really turned out to be a good relationship. I can't believe the work they've already done. And we're hoping to close the easement by the end of this year, early next year, at which time they will purchase the land and continue to grow. So, Kara?
Great. Megan, just so you know I can stay on time, I'm going to ad-lib some of these slides to speed things up. I'm going to go back to what Shema said in terms of it takes a village. And so one of the things that I think a conversation that's been happening in New Hampshire is the recognition that we as service providers in the ag community really need to collaborate and work together in order to preserve and improve the New Hampshire food system. And if you can go ahead and forward one, Megan. So I'm just going to very quickly talk about some background. I got to give some kudos to the New Hampshire Food Alliance. This was started by a group of people who recognize the importance of creating a network in order for everyone within the New Hampshire food system to be able to collaborate with one another and break down those silos. They're housed out of the University of New Hampshire. You'll notice it says Land Resource Action Team. So the Food Alliance has been around since 2012, 13, somewhere in there, and has been through varying stages. And at one point there were strategic meetings, and out of those meetings, it was recognized the importance of doing some business viability work in order to make sure that we have a strong New Hampshire food system. And there was a viability working group that was created that sort of developed a bunch of actionable steps that they saw needing to happen in New Hampshire. And once that report was put together with all these actionable steps, then it was time for these action teams to take over. And so one of those groups is called the Land Resources Action Team. This is something that both myself, Amanda Littleton from the Cheshire County Conservation District, we co-chair this, and Jeremy Lucci from CELT, along with Rebecca Brown from the Ammonoosuc Land Trust, and Charlene Anderson from the Community Loan Fund. We're all people who are involved in our Land Resource Action Team. If we can go ahead and forward I'm just going to acknowledge that this sort of is the crux of what we're keeping in mind as we're doing work within the Land Resource Action Team, right? So really looking at what is going to make farm viability possible, to improve farm profitability, increase local food production, to expand markets and that infrastructure. And if we can go ahead and forward. Okay, so if I were to go back to the Land Resource Action Team, probably early on, like 2017, at one of the Food Alliance statewide gatherings, had a conversation where we acknowledged that there was room for those working within the food system to be connecting more with those who are in land conservation. And so one of our goals became to really invite the New Hampshire Coalition of Land Trust in to have conversations to better understand what their needs were and how we might be able to work together. And this is where I'm giving the Food Alliance some kudos for actually being integral in making sure that we increase our collaboration amongst different sectors. And I would say that in doing that work with the Land Trust over the course of a couple of years, I would say that the collaboration amongst us has really improved. And what really came out of our conversations was the New Hampshire Farm Future Fund, in which it's a program where we recognize that putting a conservation easement on a farm is a one-time infusion of funds into a farm, and that this really created a ripe opportunity to do the business viability planning and the succession planning, because we need to make sure that the farms have profitable businesses going forwards, so that when they're ready to start their succession planning, that generation of farmers is able to retire and that farm is able to carry on to that future generation. This slide really is to say that when we went ahead and got the program started, or we're getting ready to get it started, we agreed that the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Districts would be the administrator of the program, and that Amanda Littleton specifically was going to be the one to actually administrate it. And if you can forward, it made sense to house the fund with the conservation districts because they promote stewardship of the land, have good relationships with farmers. Their mission focus felt like a good fit with working with Land Trust and tying in that technical assistance to work with farmers. That next slide. So the key organizations that are involved in the New Hampshire Farm Future Fund is Land for Good, and that'd be myself doing that succession planning. The Community Loan Fund, that's Charlene doing the business viability assessments. We could not do this without the support of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation. And I have to say, actually, the original funder is actually called the You Have Our Trust Fund, which was part of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation until recently, and now it's sort of branched out. So we'll have to make sure to include their logo in future slides. And the New Hampshire Land Trust Coalition, they offered critical input on the creation of the program. They're the ones to apply for the conservation projects and the farmers whose land they're conserving. So the first round of grants was awarded for the 2021 to 4 farms that are spread out across New Hampshire. And they went to the Amanuensick Land Trust, to Southeast Land Trust, to the Five Rivers Conservation Trust, and to the Upper Saco Valley Land Trust. And in early 2021, we will be accepting that second round of applications. And if we can go to the last slide, this really kind of speaks for itself. So the New Hampshire Future Farm Fund provides funding for farm viability, planning in concert with the conservation of important ag soils. The program will leverage the singular opportunity to put a conservation easement on farmland to also invest in the future viability of farm businesses. The goal of this fund is to ensure the farmland is conserved, productive, and available for future generations. And with the first round of projects underway, and so far everything is going well, and having already received the financial support to offer this program again next year, we are hopeful that we can continue to offer this opportunity to land trust and farmers for many years to come. And I'm going to end right there.
Thanks, Kara. So sorry to make you rush. You did great, and this is such great information and resources for folks. But we are going to move on to a very short video to kind of tee up Jameson's talk in just a minute. But you're going to hear in just a moment from Anthony Munene, who's the farm manager with Fresh Start Farm, who's going to just share a piece of a longer story about some land access sort of challenges and opportunities. Take it away, Megan.
And OLI stands for Organization for Refugees and Immigrant Success. We have many programs, and one of the many programs we have is agriculture program, and that where we have Fresh Start Farm. We have two farms. One is here in Concord, and the other one is in Dunbarton. The site here we started 2018. It's temporary because it's a private school, and any day they have projects lining up. So we are actually thinking what next if that happens. So we are in that process actually of looking for more, long-term sites. We had done application with the NRCS to be able to have a high tunnel, but we stopped it because this farm is so temporary. It's not permanent. It's really hard to develop. In Dunbarton, which started a long time, many years ago, and eventually always owning it, it's very secure now. We have managed to build 5 greenhouses. We have dug a artesian well. We have brought in, electricity. You develop these infrastructures knowing that, it's yours, you can develop. But on this kind of situation, it's really hard, even to expand as a program. It's really hard. So that's how it is hard to even find a place, but to know what next for the future. And now these farmers, they are okay now. They are very comfortable, they are very happy. It will be really horrible to tell them now we can't farm here next year, And that, if you think about, refugee situation whereby it's always moving, because as she was talking about how in Sudan, you have no peace. Any day you are told, wake up, leave. It really affects them when they are told now you have to leave. When they come in here, they talk, there is peace, good environment, bring everyone together as a community, as a family, and it's been great.
Okay, so Jameson, would you like to follow up with that quick story from Anthony and let us know a little bit about your program?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. And Anthony really gave a good overview of kind of the situations that at times we get ourselves into, some of the challenges that we have with finding land, investing in it and securing it for long term, but also some wins that we've had in the past, like you mentioned with Dunbarton. So if you can click to the next one. So as you said, ORIS, we have a wide range of programs that we run, all that aid in the resettlement of folks moving here. The flagship program that we have is the Fresh Start Farms brand and the New American Sustainable Agriculture Program. And these people were farmers back home on their own land, got booted off of it, and seek refuge here in America. So we have 2 groups that we are working with, one in Dunbarton and one in Concord. The Dunbarton Farmers have been growing here since around 2010, so well more established. And then the Concord Farmers, from a completely different side of the continent, have been growing for 2 or 3 years here in America. So this season we have 23 farmers that we're providing technical assistance to, multiple languages are being spoke. We have translators. We use WhatsApp to be able to talk and communicate with each other. We have 3 different locations, the Dunbarton site over on Story Hill Road. We're leasing some land from the St. Paul's School in Concord. And then we are in a new site, which is a rent-to-own, where I am right now, in Manchester, where it is our food hub, where we are aggregating and washing and storing and distributing produce out across the state through home delivery and at community pickup sites. So we're growing a wide variety of stuff, a lot of Western kind of produce, stuff that would sell at a traditional farmer's market. But our growers have brought a lot of seed back from their home and are growing it here specifically for their own markets and communities. So a lot of amaranth, a lot of sawa, African eggplant, a bunch of different types of corn. So those are kind of a niche that they have. And yeah, we're not certified organic, mostly because of the record keeping aspect. We have a lot of farmers that can't read or write even in their own language. So we try to do it as organically as possible without throwing that word around too much. So the next slide, I'll kind of talk about Dunbarton first. So this is Dunbarton, and to kind of give you a sense, this is how we kind of break up the farm. The average farmer here is growing on about a half an acre. Our average farmer last year made about $2,900 in gross profit, which we're really proud about. This year it's trending more towards 7,000 or 8,000, which we're really excited about. But yeah, so this property was leased at first from the Stone family in Dunbarton. They were an old dairy farm. The husband died. This was a cornfield. We have 58 acres here. About 8 are cleared and actually farmable. The rest is really forest and wet. So we were leasing it at first. Once they said that they were interested in selling, Mukhtarito, who's our boss, our executive director, went to really hardcore focus on fundraising to be able to purchase this property. And it took a bit of creative thinking. The Stone family came in and did a pretty big cut on the property and was able to sell that lumber off to bring down the price. And then a combination of that and an easement and just a really, really nice family, they were able to make it affordable for us where we could do a capital fundraising campaign and raise the money to outright purchase it. Once we were able to purchase it, we were able to make the investments into it to make it so people could actually grow it. For the first few years, there was a creek that runs by, they were watering. This is a picture actually from the earlier days, maybe 4 years ago. They were watering with creek water with 5-gallon buckets. They were collecting rainwater. We were able to get a 5-year lease. We were able to get the NRCS grants to be able to put up those hoop houses. And then, after we were able to secure the funding for it, we were able to get even more USDA money to be able to put in a road, to be able to get electricity. Each farmer is able to then put in for their own NRCS grants to have hoop houses. So we've got 6 houses there now. We were able to invest in a wash station, which was a big chunk of change. So yeah, these farmers have been there for about 10 years now. And then I'm going to try to get moving here. We'll go to the next slide, please. This is Concord. So this is 2 years ago. We have 7 acres that we're leasing over here from the St. Paul's School. Fortunately, they're planning to do a solar project on this section of land right now. So we are stuck in this 1-year lease agreement, and we can't get out of it. And the timing of the lease is actually a March date of when it's supposed to end. So it's very difficult for us to be able to plan for next year because come March, they could say the solar project's going forward, and then we have 14 farmers at this site that won't be able to grow. And so I wasn't able to meet everyone here. We are actively looking for new partners in land trust in case something were to happen with the St. Paul's School. And we'll go to the next slide just so I can quickly recap some important things I want to drive home. No plot's too small or too big. like I said, these farmers are growing on a quarter acre. It's really more about being able to have a sense of ownership, have their own business, and freedom. And so the money part and long-term economic sustainability is not the primary push for these people. Any investments is still investment, even though, you know, like this wash station you see here was only $6,000. For us to take it down and move it to another farm, will probably cost us $2,000. So these things add up. And then, yeah, non-traditional enterprise required non-traditional funding, creative ideas with, for example, if we can do a 5 or a 10-year lease, it opens up way more opportunities for USDA grants and funding where we wouldn't be able to have unless we had a really good, strong lease. And the autonomy piece is really important. You know, a lot of landowners have a vision of what a farm could be. We saw some pictures here where got the nice old truck, the red truck, beautiful and nice, you know, cut fields. Sometimes it's weedy and sometimes it's loud and crazy, but especially in certain communities, allowing people to do what they want to do is really empowering and important. So I'm out of time. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jameson. And I hate rushing you because I'm just riveted by everything you're saying. But while you're on, there was a quick question, and then we'll go to some of the others that have come in previously. Just quickly, is the program planning to expand, maybe looking at coming further north? So I know you just put the plug, you are looking for more land. Is there a general geographic range that you're looking for land in?
Great question. Yep. So it's really important that we're close to somewhat metro areas because especially for new Americans, they don't have access to transportation quite yet. Thank you very much. So our Concord farm, to be able to be 30 minutes away from Concord is important because some people take a cab there, some people walk there. So, you know, that's a big part. The Dunbarton Farmers have been here for long enough that they've used this as an opportunity to raise money for themselves, to earn money for themselves, to buy their first car, to get their first apartment by themselves. So they're a little bit more flexible. So we kind of go where the communities are. The Congolese and Sudanese are in Concord. We have Somalis in Manchester. So yeah, overall, we'd like to stay somewhere between Canterbury to Nashua is, you know, along the 93 corridor is ideal, and west of maybe Hopkinton to Candia, maybe a little bit farther east. But,
Got it. Thank you.
Even a few acres is important.
Great. Thanks, Jameson, so much. We don't have a ton of time, but we're gonna bang through some of these great questions. And the first one, actually, Steph, hopefully you're still with us. If you could chime in for just a minute, maybe shorter response than on the last one, if that's okay. But there's a question about how can land trusts and towns best partner with the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me okay? Okay. All right. Yeah, so Jamie, if you want to add into the chat some of the links that I've been sharing. One is a survey that we're putting out to BIPOC farmers across the Northeast, whether they're in the NEFOC network or outside of the NEFOC network. We know that surveys are really not they're not exactly community engagement, but right now it's one of the quickest ways that we can learn about the needs of farmers of color. We're doing an extensive survey just to be able to understand how folks, what are the things that folks need. So instead of assuming what folks need, we're reaching out in surveys and then community listening sessions to understand more about the needs of farmers of color. So Jamie just shared that link in the chat. The other link that Jamie shared is a link to Soulfire Farms policy action platform, and that's also Soulfire Farm is our incubator as well as our fiscal sponsor, and we are aligned with this platform as well. So if you take some time to take a look at it, it goes through a lot of different ways that you can support when it comes to, all the way from policy down to individual ways that you can work on creating equity in the food system. So mainly if you're looking at connecting with us as a partner or somebody who is interested in doing work regarding BIPOC land access. Some of the things that we're hoping that you can do before you reach out to us are looking at strategy number 5, which is internal organizational transformation, and really ensuring that you've taken some of those action steps around how your organization embodies power internally regarding Black, Indigenous, POC equity. So those are we're not really able to right now we get a lot of requests for, say, helping folks with working on their diversity, equity, and inclusion plans, and that's not something that we have the capacity for. Once you've kind of worked on that and you've embodied some of those actionable steps, both personally and internally, as far as organizational steps, that's kind of when we're ready to start partnering with organizations to work together to advance land access. One great example would be a partnership we have with Vermont Land Trust and NOPA Vermont, who are doing a lot of work around BIPOC land access, and we're partnering with them on a project to provide business planning and strategic planning services for farmers of color in Vermont. So that's been a really great program that we're piloting with them, just to really tailor those communications and tailor those connections with farmers of color in a way that is culturally relevant, culturally safe, and really looks at the needs of farmers of color, which could be quite different, especially because we farm on a smaller scale. So that's what I would share right now. Take a look at the action platform. It's great, really extensive, and yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Steph. And again, just putting in a plug for all of you to hopefully join us next week when Steph's going to be digging even deeper into some of these great examples about how we can all be better allies, BIPOC farmers. So just to get through a couple more questions, we might go a few minutes over, so I hope we don't lose you, but we do want to just get through a couple more of these and then we'll do a wrap up. But Shema, you want to take this one? There was a quick question for you from Jesse about where some of the information around land access being a top priority came from. Can you speak to that quickly?
Yeah, sure. I'll drop a couple of links in the chat. So those are 2 national surveys done by the American Farm Bureau Federation and the National Young Farmers Coalition. And if anybody wants any stat backgrounds, I'm happy to do that. So I'll include my email.
Great. Okay, and then there is a question here from Jillian that's for you, Jeremy. I don't know if we have time for a fully fleshed out answer, but it relates to Clyde Farm and how they're thinking about their more hyperlocal clientele. Let's see, they do a lot of sales in Lower Seacoast. Yeah, the question is really about, was profitability, viability discussion part of the match process that you made?
Yeah, so very quickly, that's one of the huge advantages of the Farm Future Fund is they were able to fund, they're actually in the process of doing it right now, a business enterprise analysis for Clyde Farm's new location in Farmington, which, you know, as anyone can imagine, if you're a farm selling in one particular area or community, shifting to another new community can be a real challenge. So that's where, you know, as Kara described, it was really important and helpful for them to be able to do a new enterprise analysis in their new location. So they're doing very well so far. They sold out their CSA this summer. And they're also working with some of the lower income folks in their new town by offering SNAP benefits for their CSAs. So, you know, it's not a perfect process, but it seems like they're off to a good start.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeremy. And thanks to everyone. I think we got to everything. If it wasn't announced out loud, I think it was addressed in the chat. But we are just going to do our last few wrap-up slides. We're almost there. The next is just this plug once again for you to join us next week on the 22nd for our 5th webinar of this series. Steph will be leading that. We're going to have some great case studies, and we hope you all just come back. And there is no cap on that workshop. We lifted the cap, so please do invite all your colleagues. We really hope as many land trusts and municipalities and nonprofit folks are able to join us, get some good learning in. So, and please do register. I put the link in the chat, and we'll send it around as well. I also do just want to put in a plug for an upcoming conference, the Farmland Access and Transfer Virtual Conference that Land for Good and Maine Farmland Trust will be hosting November 16th to 18th, and there are more details forthcoming. So stay tuned for that. And then I do just want to give a very special thanks to today's incredible presenters and contributors. I won't rattle off all their names because we don't have the time, but there's their beautiful faces there on the slide. Thanks to you all so much for sharing your wisdom and experiences with us today. Another plug is that I just pasted a link in the chat here about a survey. We really hope you will all just take a couple minutes right after this call. So pop that link open if you're able to. If not, we will be sending an email around within the next day or so. I really just wanted to get your feedback on this presentation, as well as any further resources that we can follow up with you and hopefully provide to you. So that would be really wonderful if you would take the time to do that for us. And then lastly, I just want to wrap up by saying thanks again to all of you for being here, especially you repeat attenders of these. It's great to see you all coming back on this series. Please feel free to follow up with me if you have any questions with any of our speakers. They're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. And we hope to see you next week at the last workshop. And just thank you all so much, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.